Welcome to One on One. I'm Steve Adubato. It's our honor to introduce Professor Elizabeth Haines, Professor of Psychology at William Paterson University, and the lead author of a study called The Times Are A-Changing, Gender Stereotypes, published in the Journal of Psychology of Women Quarterly. Good to see you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And the focus of the study is?
Gender stereotypes.
Okay, now you were saying right before we got on the air that there's a difference between gender stereotypes and?
Gender differences.
Break it down for us.
Okay, gender differences are the actual differences between men and women in terms of different psychological traits or physical characteristics, and gender stereotypes are the perceptions of the differences between men and women.
What do we know about the stereotypes? What do we find?
Well, we had a data set from 1983, and we collected new data, and we showed that the gender stereotypes have not changed over these years, which was a little surprising to us. We looked at gender stereotypical traits, which are communal and warm and versus agentic and powerful. Role behaviors like tends the house, takes care of the children, and breadwinning, physical characteristics, and then occupations as well. And remain consistent, actually a little stronger in today's data than in before. So
we're taping right after Hillary Clinton has been nominated as the first woman to represent a major party, to get the nomination from a major party for the presidency. Is it relevant to this discussion?
Of course.
Because, how so?
Yeah, well, a lot of people think that just because a few people have broken the barriers regarding gender or race with Obama, that the whole category has changed or that it's gotten better for everyone, and that's simply not the case. So just because a couple make it through the glass ceiling doesn't mean that the whole group has changed. So of course, Hillary is oftentimes brought out, oh, gender stereotypes have changed, but the majority of women are still underrepresented in Congress and the House of Representatives, and also in business and leadership. They represent, about 12 to 13% of higher level leadership positions in organizations. And so it's still not commensurate with the 50% of women who are in the workforce right now.
Why have you said, Doctor, that if Donald Trump, and again, this show will be seen for many months, even after the election, why have you said if Donald Trump were a woman, finish the sentence?
He would be even more laughable than he already is.
But we're supposed to be being scholarly and academic.
Yeah.
Is that not a political statement?
A little bit. But
where's the scholarly part, from the research?
Oh, well, so think about this. So if Trump was, it was, Donna Trump rather than Donald Trump, and it was, Bill, not Bill, but a male, Clinton, not Bill Clinton,
Bill.
Not Bill. But, that when people say these things as a gender person, you perceive them differently. There's a shifting standard in terms of, so, think about when we call Hillary ambitious, that's seen as a negative. When Trump does it, it's very positive, So the same behaviors that we apply to men and women get evaluated differently as a function of the person that are saying them.
Gender bias, how dangerous?
It's automatic, unconscious. We oftentimes don't even know that we're doing it. A lot of our data shows that women are just as sexist and as biased as our men. Which is
that true?
Absolutely.
Women toward women?
Yep. Yeah, so because it's a cognitive bias. So my basic thing is that if you have a brain, you're biased. You use information categorically in very simplistic ways because we try to understand people very simply and very quickly and don't take into account all of the information that they're giving us.
And so people who insist, I'm totally objective, I'm not biased, they don't even know, they're not aware.
Yeah, it's actually, we have a term for it. It's called bias blind spot, and everyone has it. And we're very quick to point out and understand other people's biases and how those operate, but we have kind of an inability to see our own. Oftentimes because it happens so quickly, automatically, we often make excuses for it as well. We don't understand that it's happening. So yeah, we have a lot of bias blind spots.
So what I'm curious about is where all this comes from, and I'm sure it comes from a variety of factors. So I grew up in a very, let's say, traditional Italian-American environment. That means different things to different people. But let's just say where I grew up, there were not a lot of strong, my mother was an incredibly strong woman, but in a very traditional Italian-American culture, and where my father was the dominant figure in the home. How much of how we see gender is based on how we grew up and what we saw?
It does play a factor and a role. Those are our internal working models about how men and women should behave and how they relate to one another. So as you were saying, your mom had a lot of power and strength, but it was a domain that was gender specific. It was the home, it was the house. She got to decorate and decide what to eat and so forth. Those are oftentimes low status things in the larger culture of the world. And your dad probably was a breadwinner, and those are high status things, and those where he had his sphere of influence. And we do tend to play out these things, especially when we choose our families our own. We know that gender stereotypes get very strong when people have young children because they're so stressed out and time is limited, and so you just fall back on. And gender stereotypes are like kind of comfortable schemas that when we don't have time to think, we just kind of fall back on them. And so the way that we grew up is kind of built into what we fall back on.
But you don't think that's changing? And forget about what you think, because your research is what it is. So our daughter is very young right now, and we have two sons, and I have an older son from my first marriage. And I'm convinced that our daughter, who is 5 as we do this program, is incredibly strong and very much heard. And my point is that I believe that she's being raised differently because of these times. Am I wrong?
Well, one thing that we do know from the data is that women and girls have changed a lot more than boys and men have.
Than perceptions?
No, their actual behavior has changed, and the gender stereotypes have changed. So it's much more acceptable for a girl to be powerful, confident, athletic after Title IX than it was 30 years ago. So the gender stereotypes for women have changed a little bit more than the ones for men. Men haven't taken on the caregiving, the nurturing roles, so as much as women have taken on the kind of confident, dominant, breadwinning roles that are also really lauded in American society. Those are high status things that we love when people do them.
Do you have any recommendations as to what we could and should be doing to improve things? Or is it just here are the findings?
We try to let people know that these exist and to try to people to catch their biases. Like I said, there's a bias blind spot.
How do we know if we don't know?
Yeah, well, letting people know about them, giving them tricks to little kind of if then, like, am I using gender as I perceive this person is really important, So one thing that I always tell people is that, if you're kind of taken aback by someone's gender atypical behavior, think about why that's bothering you, or would that behavior bother you if it was done by someone of the typical gender, and really assess those and do some analysis. Yeah,
I need to ask you this as a student of leadership myself. Fascinated by it. Do you believe that men and women, and the way they lead is significantly different based on gender?
Yeah, Alice Egley has done a lot of research on this.
Yes.
Lots of meta-analysis that shows that it isn't. There are very similarities that, because once you get into power, it's power that predicts your behavior, not your gender per se. And as powered people, we act in dominant, confident leadership kinds of ways.
Power corrupts, and power corrupts absolutely.
Right, exactly, yeah. So
and you don't think it's any different based on gender?
The behavior is different. It's the reactions of the subordinates that change, So women have to be a lot nicer, a lot more communal in order to be effective. It's the damned if you do, damned if you don't dilemma. So, in order to be powerful and lead, you need to be strong, you need to be confident, but that oftentimes receives a lot of backlash from subordinates because women aren't supposed to be. They're supposed to be nice. They're supposed to be kind. They're supposed to be concerned with other people's goals. And when you're a leader, you're more concerned kind of with your goals and your group's goals, but it creates a conflict. So men can get away with a lot more as leaders than women. Yeah.
Men can get away with more as leaders?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Because they don't have to be seen as warm.
But so you're saying all men are not as warm as I am as leaders? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, well, you're just an exception to the rule.
Was that the point you were trying to make?
Of course, yeah, that was exactly the point.
Everyone in the control room has just literally fallen off their chairs. Our camera guys, I'm joking. Do you mind if I tell everyone again?
Yeah.
What the research is, you are the lead. Dr. Haines is the lead author of The Times They Are Changing or Not, a study on gender stereotypes published in the Journal of Psychology of Women Quarterly. Thank you so much. Dr. Elizabeth Haines, thanks. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Okay, thanks.
Right after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by TD Bank, Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey, Suez, Qualcare Inc., Choose New Jersey, NJ Best, and by New Jersey Sharing Network. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, the statewide voice of business in New Jersey, and by bestofnj.com, covering all New Jersey has to offer. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.